It's a major setback for N Srinivasan. The Supreme Court has announced that the BCCI elections should be held within 6 weeks, and Srinivasan is barred from contesting it, at least this time around, till he has no commercial interest in IPL. Now, this verdict comes as a bitter blow for Srini, who has been trying to make his way back into the BCCI. The matter doesn't end here, though. The Supreme Court has scrapped Amendment 6.2.4, which allowed BCCI officials to have commercial interests. This leaves Srinivasan with only one option. That is, either he gives up the ownership of CSK or contests the BCCI elections. But there was some relief in the day for Srini, who was given a clean chit on allegations of a cover-up. The Apex Court clearly stated that things cannot be proven based merely on suspicion. The Supreme Court, meanwhile, came down hard on Gurunath Mayappan and Raj Kundra, who were held guilty of betting. The BCCI constitution has a clause that says that if an official tarnishes the image of the game, his team gets disqualified. The verdict hangs in balance the fate of two franchises, CSK and Rajasthan Royals. The court has formed a fresh 3-member judicial committee to further probe into their conduct. The committee, made up of Justice Lodha, Justice Ravindran and Justice Bhan, will be responsible for this. They will also take a close look at the way IPL is run and make recommendations and amendments.
बीसीसीआई को 6 वीक में आज के दिन से, आज जो कोर्ट ने ऑर्डर प्रोनाउंस किया है, 6 वीक्स के अंदर में इलेक्शन करा लेना है, और इंक्लूडिंग, कोर्ट ने स्पष्ट कहा है, इंक्लूडिंग मिस्टर एन श्रीनिवासन, जो लोग भी कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट में है बीसीसीआई से में, वो लोग इस इलेक्शन में किसी भी पद पे.
आई हैव विद मी जस्टिस मुकुल मुदगल, हु हैज गिवन रिपोर्ट ऑन IPL fixing. Sir, Supreme Court has given verdict. How do you see this verdict?
Well, there's no point of saying how I see it. It's a verdict which is binding on the whole nation. So, yes, but what I can say is it advances the concept of public administration in sports bodies, also imbues fairness, and the two honorable judges, Justice Thakur and Justice Kalifullah, deserve full compliments for advancing a major facet which affects public life, that is sports bodies.
Srinivasan has been given clean cheat in betting and cover-up allegation.
Yeah, he has been.
And court has also said that elections would be done within 6 weeks.
Yeah, that all bodies should have election as early as possible. There's nothing wrong in that.
Do you think accountability will be established in sports after this judgment?
Well, it should be. Let us hope it does get established.
How far your report will go in clearing this entire mess?
You know, our report was only a fact-finding report to the court. It's the court's order which will go a long way in helping things.
This is Justice Mudgal who is saying that court verdict is going to fix accountability and a long way in establishing fairness in sports. This is Sharad Kumar with cameraman Nikhil Sharma for Headlines Today, Jaipur.
कोर्ट ने ऑर्डर प्रोनाउंस किया है, 6 वीक्स के अंदर में इलेक्शन करा लेना है, और इंक्लूडिंग, कोर्ट ने स्पष्ट कहा है, इंक्लूडिंग मिस्टर एन श्रीनिवासन, जो लोग भी कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट में है बीसीसीआई से में, वो लोग इस इलेक्शन में किसी भी पद पे चुनाव नहीं लड़.
All right, Boria Majumdar, Shivani Gupta, Rajdeep Sardesai and Vinay Tiwari are joining us to discuss this issue. Boria, first to you, in case Srinivasan is not able to contest the BCCI elections that will be held in 6 weeks, what happens to his position at ICC?
You know, if he is not able to contest, if he has to contest, he has to sell CSK within 6 weeks, get a new buyer, get the conflict of interest clause out of the way, and only then can he contest. Question is, if he tries to do that, Maha, then in 3 weeks' time you have to have a new buyer, because then the IPL auctions are scheduled for the 2nd week of Feb. If he does try to get a new buyer, maybe you will not even see that team playing in this edition of the IPL. IPL will go completely haywire if Mr. Srinivasan wants to protect his own self and contest the BCCI election. That aside, now answering your question about his ICC future, it is the BCCI's nominee who represents India in the ICC, not one particular person. It is not Mr. Srinivasan, but BCCI and India which nominates a particular person to become the chairman of the ICC. In this case, it was Mr. Srinivasan because he was the head of the board. He was the head of the BCCI. If he is no longer the head of the BCCI, it will be upon the BCCI to appoint the member who will be part of the ICC directorate. The ICC is director, and as a result of that, the ICC is chairman. So if he is not BCCI president, it will be very difficult for him to become or continue as ICC chairman. Only way now, sell Chennai Super Kings within 3 weeks, get the auctions up on board, sell the whole, get a new buyer, and only then can you contest the BCCI elections. Pragmatically seems impossible, but maybe Mr. Srinivasan will give it a shot.
Rajdeep, is there a possibility that N Srinivasan might actually try to sell off the CSK within 3 weeks' time, as Boria is putting it there?
My sense is that if Mr. Srinivasan has to choose between BCCI and CSK, he will choose BCCI. He's desperately keen to remain as the head of the BCCI. It's not an easy choice for him to make. Where do you find a buyer in 3 weeks? And the fact is that India Cements is a company which is completely identified with CSK at the moment. And there are other issues also which could crop up in the weeks ahead, particularly as an independent committee has been appointed that could look at other allegations that have surfaced in the way the IPL has functioned. So, does Mr. Srinivasan want to take that risk of desperately looking for another buyer? Can he even think at the moment of even some kind of a Benami transaction as some are talking about? It seems difficult. I think what Mr. Srinivasan will have to be content with at the moment is continuing as ICC president. This verdict does not stop him from continuing as the president of the ICC. He will then try perhaps to appoint one of his people, if he possibly can, into the BCCI, and will have to, I believe, wait it out as far as the IPL is concerned till he can get a legitimate buyer for CSK. So these are difficult times for Mr. Srinivasan, but he is like the cat who has had 9 lives. And he's survived every time. Every time we've written off Mr. Srinivasan, he's found some way to bounce back. I see him continuing as ICC president, particularly with the World Cup coming up in just a few weeks' time. I don't think Srinivasan wants to lose that moment of glory when he's the ICC president while the World Cup is on. My sense is that at some stage, maybe not in the next 3 to 6 weeks, but at some stage, he will try and offload his stake in CSK if he can. Not easy, but he will make that effort because, as I said, he prefers the BCCI to the IPL.
I think Boria wants to make a point. Boria, go ahead.
You know, the ICC issue, as long as the BCCI doesn't nominate anyone, he's ICC president. There is no debate. As long as the next 6 weeks are concerned, no election, he is ICC president. Then the BCCI will have to decide. So at the moment, till the end of the World Cup, what you are pointing out, Rajdeep, he will have his moment of glory. No one can take it away from him. But if he is not able to control the board, which is why he'll be desperate to control the board by giving up CSK. If a new president comes and a new body comes, it is upon them to then choose who represents India in the ICC. It will not be Mr. Srinivasan. It is not upon this order. This order has nothing to do with Mr. Srinivasan continuing as ICC president. It has everything to do with the BCCI and their nominee. Hence, he will do everything in the world to retain BCCI because his ICC depends on him retaining control over the BCCI.
But the point there, Boria, is that the kind of person that he will look for the president of the BCCI will be someone close to him. There are 2 groups. One is Shashank Manohar, one is Sharad Pawar, who is now the Mumbai Cricket Association chief and may want to make a comeback to the BCCI. Shashank Manohar, who has spoken out against Mr. Srinivasan. Jagmohan Dalmia, who has also been looking for some way to return to the top post in the BCCI. It is the turn of the East Zone. There is Rajiv Shukla, who could emerge as a consensus candidate. I think the sense one gets is Mr. Srinivasan, if he cannot become the BCCI president himself, will want one of his appointees. So the first battle will be fought there. I don't think that Mr. Srinivasan will find it easy to sell CSK in 3 weeks. So really his options are, can he get someone who supports him into the BCCI as the president? Not easy, given how the equations are changing rapidly now as a result of what the court has said.
Shivani, I'd like to bring you
Rajdeep, the point is, both of us know this. Rajdeep, the point is, both of us know this. In the board, the moment someone new comes in, whether it's Shukla, whether it's Mr. Dalmia, whether it's a new candidate, you need 2 votes to nominate somebody. We know that. whoever comes in power, after that equations change. We've seen that with Mr. Dalmia, we've seen that with Sharad Pawar, we've seen that with Srinivasan. So it is too early to say whether he will be able to continue to control the BCCI even if he gets somebody elected at this point in time. But we can say safely that he controls the ICC till the end of the World Cup. He will do desperately, everything in the world to retain the board by selling CSK, which at this point in time sounds very difficult. But as you said, he will give it a best shot, and he's always made a comeback despite us writing him off.
Shivani, let me bring you in at this moment. We are talking about CSK. So I'm wondering what happens to MS Dhoni. Is the Vice President of India Cements. Is there a conflict of interest that applies to players as well?
Well, as far as this order is concerned, the order is very clear that any official, it says, at least in the wording, any official, including N Srinivasan, is not allowed to have commercial interest in tournaments while being officials in the BCCI. So that means, of course, that N Srinivasan cannot be BCCI member or even a TNCA president while having a team. But it doesn't clarify as far as players are concerned. Remember, the Supreme Court had asked the BCCI to submit list of those who have commercial interest in IPL, and to the surprise of many, the board submitted lists of former players and not really many others. It included names like Sunil Gavaskar, Ravi Shastri, who have been in the open as on the roles of the BCCI as commentators. It also included names of Anil Kumble, K. Shrikant, Saurabh Ganguly, because at one point or the other they were in some technical committee or other committees while being in IPL teams or even as mentor roles. Of course, Chris Shrikant was a selector and CSK brand ambassador at the same time. But it hasn't yet clarified what about players. Because we know that MS Dhoni is the Vice President of CSK. With the view that the court has taken on N Srinivasan, what does that mean for MS Dhoni himself? He's not just any player in Indian team. He's the captain still of the ODI and the T20 team. So we have to wait and see of what the BCCI itself also does, or maybe even the committee that has been formed, the 3-member committee of former justices, maybe that looks into this, because it has the mandate to correct the course of the BCCI.
Vinay, help us understand the financial implications of the order today, because the IPL calendar for this year is out, but the committee has a 6-month window to decide on the fate of CSK and RR.
Yes, and I think just to add to the other question again that you asked about players, and I think it's important for viewers to know this, the reason why it will not be applicable to players is because players are not the people who make the rules of running the game.
Okay.
And in this particular case, what is up in contention is conflict of interest in terms of the rules that were made and amended. Okay. Players are simply participants in the game. They don't alter the course of the game by changing the rules. Okay. And that's why my interpretation of this law is that it will not be applicable to cricketers per se, because they're not making the rules for how to run the game. On your other question, I think that's a very important point. IPL, for instance, as a brand, has had a mixed success as far as finances was concerned. It was valued at a very high price when Lalit Modi brought it in. But subsequently, because the economy tanked, the valuation dropped. In fact, the last year's tournament had only 3 associate sponsors, which is the lowest they've ever hit. Remember, the revenue sharing agreement that happens between franchisees and the BCCI and IPL has a formula of 60-70, which means 70% of the broadcast television rights money that was earned by BCCI is given to franchisees in an equal installment over 10 years. Similarly, all associate sponsorships that go to the BCCI for tournaments are shared in a 60% ratio over 10 years. The moment the number of associate sponsors drops, the money that this franchisee can potentially earn also drops. And that's something that's been happening over a period of time. We can hypothetically presume that with this kind of a taint going forward, the number of sponsorships may potentially drop again in 2015, hurting the finances even more.
But tell me, Vinay, the fact is that there was a perjury charge which was made against MS Dhoni. The Mudgal committee confirmed that MS Dhoni lied to them, that he did not know the status of Gurunath Mayappan, that he didn't know that Gurunath Mayappan was the team principal. Yes. And it's been confirmed that is part of the Mudgal report. The court has been silent on that entire issue of perjury allegedly committed by the Indian cricket captain. Can this 3-member independent committee, which has been appointed by the board, look into all these issues? Am I to understand that this is not the end of the road as far as all those issues are concerned? Allegations of perjury, allegations of spot fixing, allegations that were made of conflict of interest involving players. Do those issues still remain on the table, or is this the end of the road?
This is absolutely crystal clear, Rajdeep. The terms of reference for the committee are very clear. There are 4 things that the committee has been asked to do. Number 1, The court has already said that Gurunath Mayappa and Rajkundra were involved and guilty of betting. The committee has been tasked with setting a punishment for them. That's point one. Point two, whether the franchisees itself could be punished for something like this or not has also been given to this committee, that they will decide what punishment should be given to the franchisees for violating their existing laws. Number three, and the most important part is the committee has been asked to relook at the MOU of BCCI. What it essentially means, and we were explaining this a short while back, is BCCI is a formation under the Societies Act. Every society is formed under a memorandum of understanding, which means this committee will technically relook at all the clauses that have been used to set up BCCI, and that will make an administrative reform process in motion post this committee's recommendations.
But effectively it means that the future of CSK is still in doubt.
It is.
That the fact is, because under the IPL clauses, and you know, I'm pretty certain of that, that there is a clear clause in the IPL which clearly says that once any of your team owners or principals is found involved in activities such as betting, such as fixing, then the entire team faces a penalty. Now, given that, and the penalty involves disqualification. Now, the question is, therefore, does CSK go into the auction in 3 weeks' time? Does CSK get to play the IPL in April? I think, Boria, that is the question that is still open. That does CSK get to play at all in the IPL? Does Rajasthan Royals at all get to play in the IPL? Because if the auction is in just 3 weeks, the independent committee may well take much longer than that to decide the future of CSK and Rajasthan Royals. So there is a question mark over Mr. Sundaraman, the chief executive of the IPL, and there is a question mark over 2 of the main franchises of the IPL.
Look, 11.3 states, as you said, disqualification is one of the clauses, one of the penalties. It is not disqualification per se. There can be other punishments. There can be monetary fines, points docked, suspension, anything. I mean, we cannot conjecture. Disqualification is a possible outcome, not the only outcome. So at this point in time, they are still eligible to play, provided the committee doesn't give its recommendation before the IPL starts. So they are entitled to go into the auction at this point in time, standing today, based on that order. Yes, their future is in doubt. If the committee comes up with a recommendation saying no, these 2 teams need to be disqualified, so 2016 is in doubt, not 2015. Only if the committee recommends suspension or disqualification will they not play. But as of now, they can, because disqualification is one of the punishments, not the only punishment, based on clause 11.3.
Okay.
But there's no doubt about the fact that the morale of the players of these 2 franchises will certainly sag if there is something like a committee deciding on their fate in future.